Good morning, everyone, and welcome to WellSprings. It's so nice to see people here in Bell Hall and just know that you're watching at home on our YouTube stream. My name's Julie, and I'm going to be helping us sing some songs this morning. Please rise, whether in body or in spirit. We're going to start off with Hail, led by Andrea.
Tears you've cried, hail all that you've survived, hail all the honesty, hail all that sets you free, hail all that you believe. When darkness comes, that's your chance to shine. When ripples roll, of faith, hail every inch of grace, hail every ounce of cheer, hail every truth we hear, hail all that we hold dear. When darkness comes, there's a chance to shine. When ripples roll, hail all that sets you free. When darkness comes, there's a chance to shine. When ripples roll, you rise. When darkness comes, shine all your light, so I can get my strength from you tonight. When darkness comes, there's a chance to shine. When ripples roll, you rise. When darkness comes, shine all your light, so I can get my strength from you. I can get my strength from you. I can get my strength from you tonight.
Please take a seat. Our next song, I'm going to slow it down for Wash Away.
I got troubles, Lord, not today. 'Cause they gonna wash away. They gonna wash away.
Please rise, whether in body or in spirit, for our third song in the song block. I know you know it. Gone at last.
Gone at last. Gone at last. Gone at last. Gone at last. Gone at last. No, I had long. See that bad love, but I pray it's gone at last. Oh, night was black. The road was icy. Snow was falling, and the drifts were high. And I was weary from my driving, and I stopped to rest for a while. I sat down at a truck stop. I was thinking about my past. No, I had long. See that bad love, but I pray it's gone at last. 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 I had long. See that bad love, but I pray it's gone at last. Whoa, I ain't done. I keep doing some. I don't fall too easily. But that boy looks so dejected. He just had sympathy. Sweet little soul, what's your problem? Tell me why are you so downcast? Oh, I had long. Speak of that bad love, but I pray it's gone at last. 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 I had long. Speak of that bad love, but I pray it's gone at last. No one's why from out of nowhere when you least expect it and you're unprepared. Somebody will come and lift you higher, and your burdens will be shared. No, I do believe if I hadn't met you, I might still be sinking fast. I had long. Speak of that bad love, but I pray it's gone at last. 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 I had long. Speak of that bad love, but I pray it's gone at last. 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 I had long. Speak of that bad love, but I pray it's gone at last.
Woo! Hope you all are awake now. Welcome to WellSprings, both to those of us here in person and to everyone joining us online this morning. My name is Chris Grappi, and my pronouns are he and his, and I'm honored and blessed to be leading our worship service today. Each week when we gather, we light a chalice as a symbol of our spiritual heritage as Unitarian Universalists. It is not just a symbol of what is past, but of what is present, the divine spark, that inner light that shines at the heart of each of our lives. And as we light this chalice, may we share our light with each other and with the world. This morning, we've asked Paige to come forward to light our chalice. After she's done so, we'll say the words up on the screen together. We light our chalice to celebrate the path lit before us, the warmth of kindness that shines from within us, and the radiance of wisdom that is shared between us and never goes out. Thank you. Good morning. Our mission here at WellSprings is to be a community charged full with the charge of the soul. And I'd like to share with you this morning what's been charging my soul. And that is a quote I heard on a podcast recently, that democracy is a practice, not a one-time event. Now, what does that mean, and why am I charged by this? Because that's kind of geeky, I'm going to be honest. It's not like it's spring and all this other stuff, right? But why am I charged by this today? Well, I got to tell you, two things mainly. The first being, so at work, we're involved in this strategic planning process, and I'm facilitating a group that has an action team item, and it all sounds very corporate and dry, but it's not. And as I was sitting there thinking about it, I'm with a group of like 12, 13, 14 people, diverse backgrounds, people born in other parts of the world and here, different viewpoints, different political stances, and we're all united on a common purpose. And we had to figure out how to get over some, I'm just going to say bumps in the road, basically, and disagreements and some, conflict. And we were able to do so in that space because we were all committed to sitting down and listening to each other. And when I heard this quote on a podcast, it struck me that is what we were doing. We were engaging in a democratic practice, not an event, not going to vote, not going to a protest, just a one-and-done thing, but a practice of showing up to engage in a civic fashion. And then I see on my social media feed people in this congregation and people elsewhere engaging and showing up and being part of that democratic process on a regular basis. And that's how we reknit our social fabric. So that's what's charging me, and I know I'm like, a democracy geek or nerd or whatever you want to call it, but that's where we are today. So I hope you find some way to also be charged full as we go about this wonderful spring. So this morning, I'd like to especially welcome any newcomers. If this is your first or second time with us, we're so glad you're here. I hope you fill out a connection card so you can learn more about us and start to introduce yourself. If you're watching from home, there's a link to the online connection card in the description below the video. If you're here in person, fill out a connection card on your phone through the WellSprings app, or see any of our greeters who are waving in the back right now. If you want to interact with folks who are online this morning, there is a live chat available on YouTube. You need a YouTube or Google account. Just sign in and click the live chat button and say hello there from wherever you are in the world. Finally, you can always find more information about today's service, as well as upcoming events and news through the WellSprings app, or by scanning the QR code that was on the welcome table just outside the front doors. We have a few pieces of news we want to highlight this weekend. For that, I'll turn it over to our membership and communications coordinator, Jessica Heichel.
First is to let you know that the next two Sundays coming up are both going to be special Sunday services. 1 week from today is Easter Sunday, which is pretty self-explanatory, but we did want to say that the youngest members of our congregation should look forward to a special event happening during our Easter Sunday service. The following Sunday, which is the 24th, is Belonging Sunday, and we will be taking this opportunity to welcome some of the newest members to our congregation who have joined over the past year, but this is also a celebration of all WellSprings membership. So you will be hearing from some folks who have been here for a few years or many years. They will be speaking to us as well. We hope you can make it, whether you are joining us in person or online for these next two Sundays. The other announcement is that in honor of Holocaust Remembrance Day, WellSprings congregation, along with the Beth Israel congregation, are co-sponsoring a special show called Only a Girl. I will put some information into the chat about that. There is advance registration required if you would like to go to see this show. It's being held at the Beth Israel Synagogue. Click on that link when you have a moment, check it out, and if you can support that program, we appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, and I will see you next week on Easter.
Great. At WellSprings, the foundation of all that we do is rooted in the power of connection, making space in our hearts and our lives for each other. This is the part of the service where we honor that connection by greeting one another. If you're joining from home, take a moment now to share a greeting in the chat or maybe say hello in the WellSprings Oasis private group on Facebook. For those here in Bell Hall, you might also want to post in the Oasis group to connect with the folks outside these walls. And for those of us in this space, please ask before hugging or approaching closely. Some of us still might be more comfortable with a fist or elbow bump. If you prefer to keep your distance from others for any reason, just stay seated. That'll be the cue to give you a wave from afar. With gratitude for all the ways we can connect, please greet one another now. How are you? Good to see you. Greetings. Thank you for your warm greetings. You're all invited to continue the conversations at coffee hour, which takes place right outside on the patio after service. If you're joining from home, we also have a Zoom coffee hour at 11 a.m. Just click the Zoom link in the video description below. For those of us here in the room, be sure to check out the 2 Zoom coffee hour stations right outside where you can drop in and say hello to folks at home. I invite you now into our time of generosity, an opportunity to express our gratitude for the ways this spiritual community has an impact on all of our lives. If you feel the value of our WellSprings community right now, we hope you'll share a gift to help sustain us. If you'd like, use your phone to give from anywhere. Just text WSprings to 73256. Our greeters will also be bringing hats around for those who wish to donate in the old school way. You can drop a check or cash donation into the box outside on the welcome table. Thank you for all the ways your gift supports WellSprings. Our offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you. Having shared energy between us and giving beyond us, let's take time now to reground into the deep and soulful energy that is within us. We do this by doing what is most simple and elemental in our lives. We take a breath. inhaling and exhaling without rush or hurry, breathing in and breathing out. There is nowhere else to go, nowhere else to be, so let us be here together now as we prepare for our time of mindful silence. We follow these words from Thich Nhat Hanh into our time of meditation. If we want to enter heaven on earth, we need only one conscious step and one conscious breath. Let us cultivate peace and experience presence in this quiet time together. Wherever it is that we are, whatever it is that we are doing, however it is that we are feeling, let us remember that peace and presence are always as close to us as is our own breath. May this be so for you this moment. May it be so for you this day. May it be so for you in the days that come. And may it be so for all of us. Now, I'd like to invite the congregation's youngest members to join the staff and volunteers in the back of the room for their time of fellowship in youth spirit. Please send your young ones with their coats and masks, and please also remember to pick up your children after youth spirit, after the service. And if you don't see them outside, you'll find them in the Montgomery School dining hall. And the grown-ups, well, that's how I said that. And now I'll invite the band back up on stage for our next song.
Okay. Across the evening sky, all the birds are leaving. Ah, but then you know it's time for them to go. By the winter fire, I will still be dreaming. I have no thought of time. For who knows where the time goes? Who knows where the time goes? Sad deserted shore, all your friends are leaving. Ah, but then they know it's time for them to go. I'll still be here. I have no thought of leaving. I have no thought of time. For who knows where the time goes? Who knows where the time goes. I know I'm not alone when your love is with me. And I know that it's so, even when it's time to go. All the storms in winter and the birds in spring again. I do not feel the time. For who knows how my love grows? Who knows where the time goes? And who knows where the time goes? Who knows where the time goes?
Who knows where the time goes? It's April already. And I can't believe Easter is next week. There's so many wonderful things about being back together in the room. While we were sitting during our meditation, 2 teen boys who volunteer in our Youth Spirit program were excitedly whispering to each other, and I realized that I don't think they've seen each other in person in 2 years. Who knows where the time goes? If you were here or if you watched online last Sunday, then you know that Reverend Ken gave a remarkable message last week. It was the kind of message that reminded me just how much I'm going to miss his regular presence preaching here with us after he retires later this summer. Reverend Ken taught me a lot about preaching. And one of the things that he taught me is that when we up here can be honest about who we are and what we've been through, we can help each other find hope for a path forward. Last Sunday, Reverend Ken shared a story of grief out loud. And today, in keeping with the theme for our message series this spring, our theme that's about all of the different changes we're making, some of us resigning from things, that great resignation that we've talked about, but some of us choosing new things, integrating new parts of our lives and ourselves, picking up the threads and weaving our lives and our communities and our connections back together. And so today I want to share a personal story of integration out loud. Before I get into my story, though, I want to show you how I was inspired to talk a little bit about this today by this little cartoon that I saw a few months ago. It's a dialogue between 2 trees from the Instagram user Wholesome Comics, and it is very wholesome. And as the little scene opens, you see the tree on the left there asking the tree on the right, "How are you feeling?" And the tree on the right says, "Still dead inside." And then the tree on the right says, "But something unexpected happened." And you see that tree turn to the side, and it has a big gaping hole in it. We don't know why there's a hole there. We don't know where it came from. But if you can see, there are 3 little birds sitting inside of that hole and singing. And the tree says, I thought I had a permanent hole in me that I could never heal. But then some birds moved in. And in this last panel, the tree with a little bird nuzzled up against its branches and a little rose on its tree cheeks there says to its friend, I found a different way to be happy. I wonder how many of us feel like we have had a permanent hole torn in us. For whatever reason, whether it's from these last 2 years, something more recent, something much older. I know that life tears holes of some kind in all of us. The shapes of the holes are different, the size might be different, the circumstances are different. But this idea of an injury in us from which we fear we may never recover is very real. I know that for some of us in this room, a specific memory may come to mind because I know that some of us can pinpoint the day and the hour that life tried to tear us apart. Maybe you have more than one. Or maybe what comes to mind for you is a period of years, a period of time spent living under the hardest circumstances you've ever experienced. Could be maybe, I don't know, the years between 2020 and 2022, just throwing that out there. But there are others. There are too many possibilities. There are too many other times that we can find our lives torn. The years that surround the end of the marriage for some. The first months after the death. The accident. The assault. The illness. The surgery and the rehab. The war. There are too many possibilities. And whatever it is for you, life does tear holes eventually in all of us. It was the years that surrounded the end of the marriage that first tore a hole in me. They started early because it was my parents' marriage. They coincided with the years surrounding the illness, my mother's. And when you grow up, an only child, just me in that kind of a hole-tearing environment, you need a way to cope. We all need ways to cope with these things that tear holes in our lives. Now, you could say I got lucky because for whatever reason, in my little mind and my little heart, I decided I would cope with the difficult things in life by being really good. Any other chronic overachievers here? I certainly could have chosen a more dangerous compulsion, right? Though I realize in retrospect, there's a different kind of danger when you cope through high performance and hard work. Nobody stages an intervention. Nobody stops you when you get the acceptance letter to Harvard and says it's gone too far, right? It's too easy to keep doing. It's too easy in our society to keep pushing yourself. You will be rewarded for working hard. If you keep on trying to do the best job possible as a way of papering over those holes that life tears in us all, it's possible that no one will try to stop you. And it was easy for me to keep on doing it until eventually it wasn't. I'm also lucky because I started to see the cracks for me pretty early in adulthood, thanks to this, thanks to ministry. In the ministerial formation process, the training that Beth, our ministerial intern, is doing right now, the training that myself and Reverend Ken and all Unitarian Universalist ministers go through, you are required to do a lot of self-reflective work, and that's a good thing. But it still took me a few years between the of noticing that my go-to coping mechanism was to work harder and to achieve more. It took me a few years between the of noticing and the of recognizing that this compulsion to push myself was really bad for me. When I was struggling, I tended to work extra hard to try to do extra good, because then I would get all the kudos coming back to me to make me feel better. And it worked. And it became a habit. And it left no space. Eventually, it left no space in my life. I didn't want to let myself take time to rest or to just enjoy myself. And in those moments when I finally would rest and stop, it would come like a crash, because I was still a human being who needed that space and time, and I was starving for a break. And if I took one, I would feel simultaneously guilty and also like I never wanted the break to end. And that's not a sustainable pattern. Coping mechanisms can help us in the moment, but they're not meant to become a lifestyle. And no matter how shiny the wallpaper is, when we try to paper over these holes that life tears in us, it doesn't work. About 5 years ago, I finally decided to do something about this, and I went to therapy to work through some of that really old stuff that I had been carrying around for a long time. I had to learn how to integrate my grief from my childhood into a more balanced understanding of how I could be in the world. And I did. I learned and figured out different ways to do things, new sources of good feelings and comfort for myself, new habits that aligned with what mattered most to me. And yes, it was a form of self-focus for a time, but it actually made me feel more powerful in the end and more effective in doing all those things that I care most about in the world. And the process was messy. It didn't change anything about my past, but wow, did it make life better and more beautiful. I share all of this, both for those of you who raised your hands earlier, if it helps you, if it helps anyone to see themselves in my story and feel less alone in it. But also as one way, one story, to help us all talk about and understand what happened over these last 2 years. When the pandemic hit, all of us here in this community, but especially our board and our staff, our musicians, and me, jumped in with 2 feet. There was one very intense weekend in early March 2020 where we figured out in about 72 hours how to do church online, while all of us were figuring out how to do new things, how to raise our kids and do school with them at home, how to pivot our own businesses, how to find basic resources if we had lost hours or wages. We jumped in with 2 feet, and we figured out how we could make sure this community would survive this experience, and it was worth every minute, and we did good. But I have to tell you that somewhere along the line, I got stuck. I got stuck in those first 72 hours. And I forgot to turn off that switch. I was trying to cope in the midst of a crisis like we had never quite lived through before. And my blessed, self-protective body and mind took me right back to my old ways of coping. If any of you have read a headline, cracked open a newspaper at all since March of 2020, you know that this experience was common for people with all kinds of different coping strategies. Many people in recovery experienced relapse over these last 2 years. People with mental health issues that were previously well managed began to struggle again. Violence has escalated. Anger is everywhere. Our resources for coping get overtaxed in a crisis, and our internal systems search for whatever might work, particularly in a crisis that stretches out over years with no clear end date in sight. And so if you thought that this message was a little pat on the back, a story of neat integration with a beginning, middle, and end that ties a nice bow on the pathway to personal development, it is not. Because sometimes integration is followed by disintegration. Sometimes things fall apart again. And when that happens, it can feel like we're in an even more hopeless place. Because we thought we had fixed things. We thought we were better. We got so far, and now all of that growth and progress that was so precious can feel lost. There is little in life more discouraging than a setback when you thought things were getting better. And we see that everywhere right now. We see it in our politics. We see it in the pushback on LGBTQ rights when we thought things were getting better. We see it in the pushback on things like diversity and inclusion and social emotional learning in our schools when we know that there is a mental health crisis, right? How much it hurts to see things get pushed back when we thought they were getting better. We see it across the globe right now. We witness horrid atrocities, civilians slaughtered in Ukraine that remind us of earlier scenes of war in Europe. And we wonder what happened to the peace that my grandparents fought for, many of your parents, many of you fought for. And we might even see it in our own hearts. Our faith in each other, our belief in the promise of democracy, like Chris talked about, we can't take for granted anymore. It's hard when we thought things were getting better and they fall apart again. And those holes gape open before us. So there were parts of me that disintegrated again over these past 2 years. Now, one blessing, I suppose, of the last 2 years is that it was pretty clear to me why that was happening. I made you a helpful graph. You can see on the left here the crises, plural, of these last 2 years. A large blue circle, and my coping mechanisms are smaller. That little tiny green circle, the new, healthier coping mechanisms I developed were dwarfed. The larger circle of the deep roots of those older unhealthy coping mechanisms, the crisis was even bigger than those. So even after I fell back on those old strategies of pushing myself and working way too hard and way too much, my ability to cope was eventually overwhelmed. And for the first time in my life, after pastoring to so many of you, after learning and reading and hearing so much about what it's like to experience mental health symptoms, I started having some of my own. I was crying a lot for no reason. I felt, first thing when I woke up in the morning, and all day long, this persistent sense of panic and sadness I had extremely low energy and I felt exhausted nearly all of the time. I even had one temporary episode of loss of function with something small but just consequential enough to scare me when it began to rain one night while I was driving home, and I swear for about 90 seconds I could not remember how to turn the windshield wipers on. If you were here at WellSprings in the fall, you know that when I noticed these symptoms were persistent, I realized I had to ask for some help. And I did. And you all said yes. I asked for something that I wish all of us could ask for in our workplaces. If you want help advocating for it, I will coach you. I will do my best because it's so important. We have all been through quite a couple of years, let alone whatever was happening in your own personal and private lives. Here at WellSprings, I asked for 6 months with an adjusted schedule, a 4-day work week, so that I could take the time and the space I needed to work with a therapist again and to begin to heal from the effects of all of that. This month, April, is the final month of those 6 months. And I'm not experiencing any of those symptoms anymore. Taking time, healing, doing something about it, it works. And the healing is not over. But I have learned more new things as I pick up and weave together the pieces this time around. I've learned more new ways to connect with what really matters to me most. More new habits to tend more of those little green shoots so that that circle gets bigger. I am making something whole again, reintegrating those pieces, which feels like the biggest blessing I could have asked for, because I realized that the thing I was most afraid of, the thing that many of us fear as we struggle to cope with a crisis, is that we'll never feel the way we used to. I was afraid that this was going to sweep away all of my old joy for this work, that this would steal my ministry that was so precious to me. Many ministers are joining the Great Resignation for all kinds of reasons. I was afraid that all of the goodness and the spirit that I bring to this work was lost forever. But it was not lost. It was just overwhelmed. If you are afraid that something precious to you was lost during this time, if you're afraid that your joy is lost, or your hope for this world is lost, or your faith in other people is lost, I can tell you from personal experience, it's possible that it's not gone. It's just overwhelmed. Many things go underwater for a time. They can be obscured from us for a season. As the old scripture says, you may see through a glass darkly now, but that doesn't mean that one day you won't see clearly again. For me, the trauma of these last 2 years showed up as burnout, because that has been the way that I cope. But like I said before, these holes life tears in us come in all different shapes. And I don't know necessarily what holes life has torn in you. I don't know if they're new or if they're very, very old. But I know how it feels to feel the threat of an injury that we fear we may never recover from. And I know that there are lots of people here in this community who have learned to live with these open, gaping, God-shaped holes in ourselves. As long as human beings have been here to tell the story, we know that there is no crisis, no bump in the road, no setback or relapse, no chilly, unseasonable April day that will stop the spring from coming. We don't even need to read that one in a holy book. We see it in the ground and the sky. So friends, if you are listening today, whether here or at home, and perhaps you realize that you have just been coping recently, please know that I understand. We understand. And we all invite each other this morning to remember that coping is much too narrow a way for living all the time. We believe here in this community that we are all worthy of a life so much bigger and so much more full. There's a reason this idea of a God-shaped hole is so persistent. Reverend Ken was talking about it last week in his message. It's referenced in our WellSprings core beliefs. It's found in the earliest Christian writings of theologians like Augustine, Pascal, C.S. Lewis. It's right there in the concept in Buddhism of the hungry ghost, grasping attachment, endlessly craving something to fill that space but never being satisfied. Even Mick Jagger knows about the God-shaped hole, right? He can't get no satisfaction. The God-shaped hole keeps showing up because that hole represents our attempts to cope with the ongoing reality of suffering. The thing that we wish we could eliminate in this world but is apparently above our pay grade. And the great work of spirituality, of tending to your soul, is not to fill up or paper over those holes, but to leave them open. Because when they are open, something greater than ourselves, something from outside of ourselves, a kind of grace, can flow through them. A closed-up hole has no room for birds to build their nest, no room for babies, no room for new life. The broken places in our souls don't heal by being patched over. They heal season after season by rotting down until the soil is fertile, by the cycle of tears that comes to water, and by the breeze and the sun and all the animals, human and otherwise, that come to help us till the land, to break things up, to get ready. Maybe it has been a hard season for you. A new one is on the way. And perhaps in this next season of our lives, we can find a different way to be happy. Amen. And may you all live in blessing. I invite the band to head back up here and the rest of you to take a minute to join me in the spirit of prayer. God of the mysteries, Creator, mysterious yourself, of all of these things that surround us, all of these people, all of this earth, blessed and painful as it is at the same time, how can it be so many things? Holy Presence, may you offer us some peace when we are tired of the struggles around us. May we remember that together we can give each other that same presence, gentle as the seasons, steady as the seasons as they change. Here through all of it, through the good and the bad times, May we feel the truth that we are not doing this by ourselves, and that perhaps opening up and sharing a little bit of how we're doing with our fellow trees, with our friends, can help us all find our pathway forward. For the prayers I've spoken out loud and for the prayers that all of us are carrying on our hearts this morning, we say amen.
Please rise, whether in body or in spirit, for our final song.
Winter is the oldest season, but quietly beneath the snow, seeds are stretching out and reaching, faithful as the morning glow, carrying nothing but what you must. Leaning towards the light, let it go, shake off the dust. Leaning towards the light, today is now, tomorrow beckons. Leaning towards the light, keep practicing a resurrection. Leaning towards the light, the shadows of this world will say, there's no hope, why try anyway? Every kindness, large or slight, shifts the balance toward the light. Waters wide and open wider, leaning towards the light. Don't just walk when you can fly, leaning towards the light. When justice seems in short supply, leaning towards the light. Let beauty be your truest guide, leaning towards the light. The shadows of this world will say, there's no hope, why try anyway? Every kindness, large or slight, shifts the balance toward the light. The prayer I pray at eventide, leaning towards the light. All left undone be put aside, leaning towards the light. When forgiveness is hard to find, leaning towards the light. Help me at least to be kind, leaning towards the light. Leaning towards the light. Leaning towards the light. Leaning towards the light. Leaning towards the light.
This light may go out, but the source that sparked the flame is always with each of us. And together we say, as we release this flame from its faithful service today, we allow the spark in each of us to burn on, to warm our compassion, to fire our delight, and to light our paths today, tomorrow, and always. Friends, thank you. I just want to say thank you today. It's a privilege to minister to this community and to receive all your kindness. So I hope we return it back to you. Let's put our hands together one more time. Take us out.